Sergeant Brown and his daughter Kathy must transport 7 criminals to a nearby military fort for their impending executions. Along the way, their wagon is destroyed by bandits who believe gold was being transported on it. Now, chained together, Brown is determined to make them walk hundreds of miles to the fort while keeping his daughter safe and figuring out which criminal murdered his wife in order to take his revenge. A pretty infamous entry in European Western cinema, Cutthroats 9 was made in Spain and released in 1972, and is a bit notorious for the level of violence shown in the film. Burned bodies, slit throats, headshots, and chopped off limbs are all shown in grisly detail. It definitely feels at times like you're watching an 80s slasher film, and somewhat humorously, they gave out William Castle-esque terror masks at theaters in case the violence was just too much for moviegoers. According to people who worked on the film, the blood and guts were added after principal photography at the request of producers who were trying to capitalize on the boom in violent horror at the time. Cutthroats 9 is probably the most grim Western I've ever seen. Just about every character in this movie is despicable, sweaty, gross, and willing to turn on one another for their freedom. The tension is ramped up by the inclusion of Kathy, the young daughter of Sergeant Brown. With the criminals shackled to one another and always leering at her, waiting for their chance to pounce, it's one of those things where you're just dreading where this film is going to go. And yes, it goes there. When the criminals eventually get the upper hand, there's a brutal scene where they torture Brown and make him watch as they assault his daughter. There's also an entire subplot surrounding which of these men killed Kathy's mother, and the ultimate reveal just hammers home how pessimistic everything in this film is. The film looks just as dirty and gross as the characters that inhabit it. You get some brief flashbacks for each character that shows how they ended up on this chain gang, but the film itself feels like an amateur student film at times, and yet it works for what it's attempting. It's like the film's outlook is so bleak on life that it extends to the shots and editing as well. Anyone who watches this is going to see inevitable comparisons to Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight. It just seems totally obvious that this was an inspiration, what with the unlikable characters, the snowy mountain setting, and the extreme violence. If you can get past some of the harder elements in the film, it's a mostly enjoyable watch. It does slow down a bit after a dramatic and unexpected turn at the end of Act 1, but it is great to watch these sleazeballs turn on each other. They are criminals after all, and when they find out that the chains that bind them are actually made of gold, it becomes a guessing game to see who will live and who will die. Imagine an extremely scuzzy and violent Treasure of the Sierra Madre. As I record this, Cutthroats 9 is on Tubi. If you're into violent Euro westerns and haven't seen this, it should be put right up there at the top of your list to check out. If you have a hard time with low-budget amateurish filmmaking or uncomfortable violent content, you may just want to stick to Gunsmoke reruns. This is the first installment of a new series here on Outpost Unknown that I will be doing called Western Wednesdays. It won't be every Wednesday because I am busy, but every time I see an interesting or unique Western that I feel has not been seen by very many people, I will post a new video to try to spotlight it and emphasize that it's worthy of a look. Stay tuned for the next episode, which will feature The Four of the Apocalypse, directed by the great Lucio Fulci.